Good evening, and welcome to the North Rock School Board meeting, where Dr. Gregory Pileski is the proud superintendent. At this time, the North Rock Public School comment procedures are: citizens who desire to speak during public comments must sign in prior and will be called to the podium. Public comments is not a question and answer period. As such, school board members and the superintendent do not respond to public comments during a meeting. Further, citizens will have no more than 3 minutes to speak per Arkansas Code 613-619 and will not be allowed to make comments that shall prejudice the board of directors concerning students or personnel matters that could come before the board for disciplinary reasons or employment consideration, or that is in conflict with other district policies of law. At this time, we have Mr. Richard Tatum Jr. open for public comments.
Thank you, and just for the record, that's Richard Tatum the second, not Junior. So I want to thank y'all for letting me speak. I'll try to be as quick. I've got one issue that may take a little bit of time just so we can get clarity on the explanation. First and foremost, sorry.
Let me start the clock. Just a second.
If I had free time, I'll just say so.
Go.
Okay, got you. All right. So first, as a parent of students at 7th Street Elementary, I would like to know from the board in some form, what is the plan for getting a permanent principal placed there? I know we have Mr. Logan who is there. I feel like Mr. Logan may be doing the best he can, but as I understand it, he may also be pulling double duty with his original job title plus 7th Street. I've got to get the confirmation on that because I don't know that, but I've heard that. And so if that is true, then that's a lot to put on him, and we need a devoted principal for that school. Secondly, we have the school grades came out not too long ago, and they were not what anybody would have wanted for most of our schools. And so does each individual school have a plan for improvement? I know I've heard some talk about a district plan for improvement, but does each individual school have a plan for improvement, and what would that be? So that would be my second point. And then my third one, which will take probably the most amount of my time because I want to be clear on this. Recently, I made a post in a social media group on education asking a question pertaining to the board. There were some people who took that comment as an attack on the board, and I want to make sure that I'm clear so everybody can hear me. That was not the point. The point was I needed to be educated on something. I asked for clarity on it, and other people took it way further than what I intended. So please don't take it that way. It was just a point. But the question that I pose is that before the board goes into executive session, there is a spiel that's read by Ms. Williams who talks about why executive session is allowed, what are the parameters of executive session, and then states that, Arkansas Code, I think it's Title 25, Chapter 19, Section 106, 2C1, says that the specific purpose of executive session shall be announced in public before going into executive session. And whenever y'all do that, you read a list of reasons afterwards, but it's not the specific reason why we're going in there. Now, I want to be clear. Specific reason does not mean give identities or details about any particular case. It's literally, we're going in here to discuss the hire of a personnel. We're here to discuss the resignation of a personnel or the discipline of a student, whatever it may be. But that list of reasons that's read has the word "or" in it, which is not specific language. That's optional language. And so that seems like it's not in following with the rule. And this might seem like a really trivial issue, and I kind of agree to a certain point. But if we have a rule that says we have to be specific about why we're going in here, and we don't follow that rule, what does that say to our students? That, hey, this rule really doesn't matter. And if our students follow that, then that would be the same thing. I'm going to shut up here in just a second. So my whole reason for that was just to...
Time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. I would like to say if there were persons that came in after the time, are there other public comments? Are there other public comments? Are there other public comments? If not, I officially will call this meeting to order. At this time, would you please call the roll, Ms. Colquitt?
Sure. Mrs. Williams?
Here.
Mrs. Walken?
Here.
Dr. Reddish?
Here.
Mrs. McLean?
Here.
Mrs. Temple?
Here.
Ms. Carson West? And Mr. Still?
Here.
Okay, at this time, we will have the flag salute and a moment of silence from the North Rock Middle School sixth grade campus.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Your parents here? Hello? Your mom here? Oh, come right up, mother, and take a picture with her, please. All right. Great job. At this time, Mrs. McLean, would you do the vision and mission statement, please?
Our vision statement is world-class schools for world-class students. Our mission statement, the North Little Rock School District and the community will provide for achievement, accountability, acceptance, and the necessary assets in the pursuit of each student's educational success.
Thank you. At this time, Mr. Barnes, of recognition of people, events, and programs.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, with our regular meeting, we start with our student presentation, and tonight will be the sixth grade campus, and we'll welcome our fearless sixth grade principal leader, Mr. Clark, and his students that are going to present. So welcome, Mr. Clark, and introduce your students to us when you get a chance.
All right. Good evening, Madam President, school board members, Dr. Paluski. It is my pleasure to bring forth to you tonight a group of students that have exhibited an exemplar piece of writing that they recited during our literacy night that we had October 10th. And we had a fantastic night, a good showing, but these 5 individuals that are here held a breakout session where they recited their literary piece. And tonight, they are going to present that to you, the school board. And as they are before they do their piece, they'll introduce themselves. So,
Hi, my name is Lucy Tejas, and I am a student at North Little Rock Middle School. I will be reading a poem I wrote titled, The Dreamy Second. Swish, swish, the air swishes across my face. Wheels turn, music plays loudly. Aubrey was behind me. We locked eyes. Our favorite song was playing. Time slows down. The feathery feeling of happiness arrives. This is the best field trip ever, bestie, I say. You know it. time speeds up again. All I can hear is the vroom vroom of speeding roller skates. Thank you.
My name is Alexandre Alcones, and I will be reading my literacy work. One summer day in the Philippines, when I was about 9 years old, I was outside our backyard mowing the lawn. And then something jumped in the grass. Then when I checked, to my surprise, it was a bearded dragon. Out of my curiosity, I picked up the bearded dragon, looked closely at it, and realized that it was a boy. He squeaked in such a high-pitched tone. He is about 2 inches long, scaly, and the color of his skin is as brown as the trunk of a tree. He's a very energetic and playful. My brother and I immediately fell in love with him. We named him Bayani, a Tagalog word which means hero. I can still remember how he hid himself under the sand, played stones with different sizes and shape, and ate his favorite spinach and mealworms. Bayani would usually sleep in my room, but soon enough, while I was watching him, I realized that Bayani needed a better place to live in instead of a small glass container. So I thought about what would be a perfect home for him. After doing some research and brainstorming, I found a bigger and more efficient house for him that looked like a fish aquarium, and it was recommended by bearded dragon professionals. However, I lacked the required parts. I used my imagination and creativity and finally came up with the idea of using cardboards from different sizes. I started working, but I realized that it would take a long time if I would do it by myself. I asked my dad and my brother if they could lend me a hand, and without hesitation, they both agreed. I gathered all of the materials in our basement and called my dad and my brother and decided where to work. After some time of thinking, my dad recommended our garage. My dad and I decided to work in our garage because it is bigger and we did not need to clean a lot afterwards. We cut up the cardboards, glued them together, and made sure they were sturdy enough. It took us about an hour to finally get it done, and as soon as we finished the house, Bayani immediately ran into it. He was so excited it only took him a few minutes for him to get immediately hungry. I fed him small mealworms and healthy, delicious spinach. After that, we played and played until he got tired of running, so he went to the water and drank a lot. Then he was sleepy. He climbed up his big mossy rock and slept quietly.
Hi, my name is Kylie Blair. I'm a student at NLR. I will be reading a poem I wrote titled Fall for Me. Fall will always be my favorite season. I know this because I love the fall temperature. It's not freezing, but it is cool. It's just right outside. I love the orange and brown leaves as I plant them with my family. I love how fall just gives me a cozy feeling, curling up in my blanket and watching my favorite show, bonfires outside with my friends and family. My favorite month is October, and that is a part of fall. The state fair always happens in fall. I always go with my family or friends, and we have so much fun. Funnel cakes, rides, and games fill the air with excitement. Fall is just an amazing season overall.
Hi, my name is Ashley Orange. I'm a student on Team Pumas at North Little Rock Middle School. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoy my presentation. I will be reading a story I wrote. It was the summer break of 2022, June. The birds were chirping and the sun was shining. Except there was one problem. Spring had just begun and I was already bored. Since I had already watched TV, nothing good was on anyway. I wasn't able to play games on my tablet either since it wasn't noon yet. So I laid there on the couch sad sighing. Listening to my mom click and clack on her keyboard and watching my dog sleep. I have to find something entertaining to do, I thought. Suddenly, an idea popped into my head. What if I played a game? Oh, I have no one to play with, I thought. I had been an only child at the time, which I still am. I like to consider my dog as my brother, since sometimes we don't get along. My mom worked from home, so she was super busy, and my dad had already gone to work. There was nothing to do when suddenly I got an idea. Wait a minute, I thought, who says you can't play solo? I ran happily to my room and grabbed a bunch of items, my pillows, seashells, toys, anything I could find. I went back to the living room and threw all the items on the floor. My dog got up, stretched, and came over to sniff the pile. What can I do with this? I thought eagerly. Maybe I can make it a little bit like baseball. So I took all 4 of the pillows and set up bases as if it were baseball. All of a sudden, another genius idea popped into my head. I slid quickly across the hardwood floor to get to my mom's workroom. Mom, do we have any note cards? I asked her. You mean the small cards with the lines on it? Said my mom. Yeah, those ones, I replied, looking around. They're in my purple backpack, she said as she continued to click and clack loudly on her keyboard. I grabbed the note cards out of her backpack and went back into the living room. Thank you, I replied. I stopped by my room to grab a pen. Then I started to write on the note cards. My plan was every time you get to a base, you pick up a card to see what you have to do, kind of like the game Sorry. Then I set up the cards on the couch and got to work. I started putting a few items on each base. I ran back to my room to get a bouncy ball and a Disney on Ice wand from under my bed. Be careful with that. Make sure Pepper doesn't eat it, said my mom as I walked by her room. My dog Pepper would eat anything that would fall on the floor. It doesn't even have to be food. As I continued to arrange my items on the floor, my mom walked past me with her water bottle and said, "What's that?" As she went to the kitchen to get some more water. I'm making a game/sport, I said. Is it a game or a sport? She replied as she shooed Pepper out of the kitchen. It's both. I couldn't really decide, I said. Oh, okay, said my mom, nodding and swiftly walking back to her room. At 12, you can get on your tablet, she lightly yelled to me from her workroom. I stopped what I was doing and looked up at the clock. It was 11:34. I quickly finished the game and began to play. I stepped on the first base next to the couch and picked up a card. Hit the ball as if you were playing golf, it read. So I grabbed the Disney on Ice wand and hit it across the living room and into the kitchen. I quickly paused the game to go get the ball to make sure Pepper didn't swallow it. As I ran back, Pepper lifted his head up and put it down, noticing that nothing interesting was going on. Nothing really interesting happens when you're an only child. I picked up another card, already getting bored of the game. Put the shell over your mouth and dance like a monkey. Okay, I said as I snorted. I bent down to grab the shell. I put it over my mouth and danced around. I kicked my legs around and made loud sounds, but not too loud because my mom was working, and she wouldn't be able to focus with all the monkey business going on in here. My mom came out of her room to get a snack. It's 12 o'clock now, she said, reaching for some Pringles out of the pantry. I looked at the clock. Wow, time had really passed by, I thought. My mom came out of the pantry and threw my tablet on the couch. I looked at my tablet, then back at the game I made. Then I smiled. Maybe I'll play for just a little bit longer, I thought, as I continued to play the game that I had made.
My name is Natalia Warren, and I'm on Team Cheetahs at North Little Rock Middle School. One day when I was in pre-K, we would occasionally have free time, meaning that we could either play with the toys we had there or free draw. I would always choose free draw, although I never knew what I wanted to draw. I was always interested in becoming an artist. As soon as I got my paper, I immediately started thinking of what I would draw. I sat there thinking to myself for a few minutes, should I draw my family or a dog? About 15 minutes had passed, and I still couldn't think of a single thing. A little later, a teacher came over to check on how I was doing. Have you decided on something to draw? She asked, knowing I wasn't very sociable then. I just shrugged, she tried to suggest a couple of things to draw. Maybe you should draw your friends. I just shook my head because I didn't have many friends at the time. Like I said before, I wasn't very sociable. Then the teacher went on to help another kid. I still couldn't think of anything to draw. A few moments had passed, and it was almost nap time. Okay, now I really had to hurry up. I didn't decide on anything to draw, so I just scribbled all over the paper. The teacher came back to check on me once again. She looked at my paper with an interesting look on her face. She just sat there and stared at it. She stared at it as if it was something beyond bizarre. What did you draw? She asked while smiling, acting as if I didn't just see the look on her face. I didn't really think about having to tell her what I drew. So I quickly came up with a name to call. Came up with something to call it. Excuse me. Seconds later, I came up with something to call my drawing. A tornado, I replied to her. I was kind of embarrassed at what I drew. I started having second thoughts, telling myself I should have just chose to play with the toys instead. It looks really wonderful, she said with a comforting smile. You could tell it was a real smile, too. She walked over to her desk and got a push pin. Then she walked outside the classroom door. I poked my head outside the door trying to figure out what she was doing. She stuck the push pin through the paper, then through the wall. I finally realized what she was doing. She was hanging up my artwork. I was so proud of myself, so proud that I even started making more drawings. A few drawings later, it was finally nap time, and I was feeling pretty drained from that day. After I put my things away, I grabbed a blanket, laid on the floor, and peacefully drifted off to sleep.
All right. Mr. Clark?
So this is just a few examples of some of the exemplar work that our students are doing right now. And so I want to give another applause to our great students here.
Will we have the parents to come up? Teachers, the teachers and parents, guardians.
Get one with just students first. Okay. You get one with just students first, and then I'll get Mr. One, two, three. Over here.
You can get the full presentation on YouTube or the North Rock channel station.
I can't see it. I can't see it. Okay. 1, 2, 3. So our first superintendent's honor roll will be presenting to Ms. Cindy Russenberger. She was nominated by Dr. Brooke Reynolds and Dr. Leanne Stoll. They wrote the following. Ms. Russenberger is a special education teacher for the Virtual Academy. This is her third year in the position, and she has taken on more roles and responsibilities this year. She has been asked to expand her duties this year and has excelled in all facets. While still serving as virtual special education students, Dr. Reynolds has asked her to go back to her social studies roots and to teach middle school social studies and Arkansas history. Dr. Stoll requested she help with the homebound students while a colleague is out on medical leave. Both tasks have required Mrs. Russenberger to expand herself professionally and learn new technology. She has accomplished both tasks with a positive attitude. Beyond these new duties, Mrs. Russenberger stepped in and completed the NWEA test for another colleague who was out on medical leave, assisted with grading and student communication. She did these tasks voluntarily, showing that she can take on initiatives and demonstrated self-direction. She has also been a tremendous help to Dr. Reynolds by leading orientation for new virtual students. It is because of all of these wonderful qualities and willingness to serve that we are nominating Mrs. Russenberger for the Superintendent's Honor Roll. Next, we're going to be honoring some individuals from Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. This nomination was written by Ms. Maribeth Hatch. She says the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission has come on board as an industry and community partner to support the outdoor, conservation, and environmental science aspects of education in the North Little Rock School District. Through this partnership, students have been able to start engagement through experiences in the classroom and in the field, literally. J.J. Gladden, Assistant Chief of Education for the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, and Bo Davidson, who is the Fishing in the Natural State Coordinator, have consistently said yes to requests to provide learning opportunities for students to experience real-world learning, as well as teachers and staff through professional development, through fish dissection, mobile aquarium, stream team water quality testing, and fishing in natural state archery and professional development. We know the possibilities are endless. That yes mentality has continued through this school year as well, as we continue to push for even greater experiences and opportunities, including those that involve agriculture and fisheries work in partnership with the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. That partnership with the Game and Fish Commission and UAPB will grow from 7th Street, the COE, and the Academy, and we hope beyond. While magazine features are exciting and fun, it is truly the genuine partner-to-school relationship that has made this partnership what it is and so successful thus far. The Arkansas Game and Fish Commission team has been intentional about providing experiences to expose students to the world that they live in such a way that it makes this type of learning valuable for all students, not just some. Thank you again for this partnership and willingness to continue to do what is best for our students. Mr. Davidson and Mr. Gladden.
Good evening. To Board President Ms. Williams, members of the board, Dr. Paluski, North Little Rock School District, parents, family, staff, community, good evening. Tonight on this presentation recognition, I'll have a little help with me to translate, because as we celebrate National Hispanic Month, we have a Hispanic parent family that we're honoring tonight. So Mr. Howe will translate. So bear with me, I've never done this. It is my honor to stand before you and present our October Parent North Star recognition. Our recipient is a single parent with a 5th grade student at Ridge Road Elementary. She has served the school and supported teachers since her son, Danny, was in the 1st grade.
And I'm sorry, I'm not feeling 100%, so I'm like, so. Nuestro destinatario es un padre soltero que un estudiante de 5º grado en primaria Ridge Road. Ha trabajado en la escuela y apoyando a los profesores desde que su hijo, Danny, estaba en 1º grado.
She is described as always being a light and never complaining.
Se la describe como siempre una luz y nunca quejándose.
She is willing to help regardless of circumstances or time.
Está dispuesta a ayudar sin importar las circunstancias o el tiempo.
If she's asked to do something, she is found doing it. Many times she's not asked. She just does it.
Si le piden que haga algo, se la encuentra haciéndolo. Muchas veces a ella no se le pide, ella simplemente lo hace.
Over the years, she's found time to engage with her son and her son's teachers, striving to learn all that she can to make sure that she can help him at home.
A lo largo de los años ha encontrado tiempo para interactuar con su hijo y sus maestros, esforzándose por aprender todo lo que pueda para asegurarse de poder ayudarlo en casa.
On several occasions, it was obvious she was coming from work or headed to work because she was dressed in her uniform, but making it a priority to check in with the school.
En ocasiones varias se notaba que venía del trabajo o se dirigía al trabajo, estaba vestida con su uniforme, pero teniendo como prioridad registrarse en la escuela.
Spanish is her first language, and she has supported many of our families by doing registration and other parent events, by translating and helping them to feel welcome and comfortable, and most definitely to feel a part of our great school and awesome school district.
El español es su primer lengua y ha apoyado a muchas de nuestras familias durante las inscripciones y otros eventos para padres, traduciendo y ayudándolos a sentirse bienvenidos, a cómodos y definitivamente a sentirse parte de nuestra gran escuela y nuestro increíble distrito escolar.
Dr. Paluski, Board of Education, Ridge Road staff, and North Little Rock family and community, join me in honoring our October 2023 Parent North Star, Maria Hernandez and Danny. Thank you, Mr. Howe. Great rising. Many times we see things happening in our world, in our community, even at our schools. How often do we take action to address the concern? How do we address it? Do we post it on social media? Do we call and discuss it with someone else? Or do we get up and make a difference? With the many concerns and situations in our world, community, and schools, we need difference makers. Well, when I think about our great rising recipients for October, my heart jumps with joy. Mr. Farson, a science teacher at the Academy, introduced our recipients to North Little Rock School District. Mr. Farson saw a need at the school, and he shared it with his church family. Friendship Baptist Church, located in Sherwood, where Pastor Thompson has served as pastor for 35 years. Mr. Farson said, one day he was sharing concerns with Pastor Roy Thompson and John Holland, and they immediately asked, what can we do? How can we help? When told, there was no hesitation, there was more anticipation and celebration. Mr. Farson put me in touch with Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams put them in touch with me, the principal, who put them in touch with our office, and they have begun serving our students and staff at the Academy ever since. Today they fed the staff and are working with our PEP, Ms. Sims, scheduling times with students during lunch and other times during the day. Dr. P and Chris Keelan, our volunteer mentor to-do list, is right on time. An interesting thing to note is that Mr. Holland and Mr. Thompson were students in that same building during their junior high years here in North Little Rock. Help me salute Dr. P, North Little Rock School District. Let's salute our great rising recipients, Pastor Roy Thompson and James Holland. Mr. Thompson, Pastor Thompson wasn't able to be with us, but Mr. Holland is. And he thought he was coming to talk about mentors, but you are being honored for all your work. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Executive closed session. Executive closed session per North Rock School District Policy 1.14A stating that private or closed discussion by the board may occur as part of a regular or special board meeting. Executive sessions may be held only for the purpose of considering employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or the recognition of an employee, or to discuss matters of pupil punishment if requested by the parent or legal guardian. No resolution, agreement, or motion considered in the executive session shall be legally binding unless the board reconvenes in public session and present the items for vote of the membership. Further, Arkansas Code Title 25, Chapter 19, Section 106, 2C1 states, the specific purpose of the executive session shall be announced in public before going into executive session. Please join me in the closed executive session discussing the following matters: employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or the resignation of an employee.
Yeah, 8.1, board member involvement.
Get my notes.
Okay, 8.1, board involvement. Okay.
Should I go
Still
start?
missing a person. Ms. Reddits?
Sure. I attended the superintendent board luncheon at the high school. I had two awesome, what do you call it, ambassadors. I had Callan and Olivia, and I guess I must have been special because Olivia gave me a flower. And so it touched me. I went to Boone Park's second cup of coffee Title I meeting, Be the Voice for the PTA. Great turnout, awesome turnout. I really loved the food. They had different nations of food for everybody to try out. Awesome. Go Boone Park. We won Southwest football game. I was there. The homecoming pep rally for at the high school, it was, I know it's not politically correct, but it was off the chain. We had fun. It was fun. It was a great pep rally, and I attended the ASBA Region 8 meeting in Mount Vernon.
Okay, Ms. Temple?
I was trying to remember. I remember going to the middle school luncheon, and that was very informative. The kids were behaving very well and interested in forming clubs.
Okay. Mr. Steele?
Thank you. Yeah, I went to Course 7th Street, Ridge Road. I had a great time at Ridge Road. Really appreciate the hospitality, and I learned it does not always have to be a big incentive, but just a little ice cream and popcorn makes the world of difference. And it was good to see the principal out there working and playing ball with the kids, and that was great. And it was a great time to be there. Also had a chance to go to Glenview and enjoyed that. Glenview was probably one of the quietest schools I've ever been to. It was so quiet, I had to be quiet. It made me whisper, but that shows that somebody's in control. Students were in their classroom doing their work, doing a great job. Just appreciate that. And of course, you know, our football program, volleyball program was pretty good. They finished strong, but the football program is going to be okay. And the reason I say that because there's a lot of talent in the 9th grade coming up, so we're gonna be just fine. Thank you.
Ms. McLean?
Yes, I was at the North Rock Middle School for the community conversation night, which was great. We had some parents there. There was a great dialogue with parents and teachers and principals, discussed a lot of different things with them and behavior changes. We had our luncheon there. Well, I think that's already been mentioned. That was great with the kids and seeing them interact with their perspectives on things. And Wildcat football, I've been going and eating my share of hot dogs and nachos. And I think Natalie's been making all those for us too. At our October meeting for the North Little Rock School District Retired Employees Group, we had a panel of students from the high school, and it was awesome. They told us a lot of things that they were doing and programs they were involved in, and members got to ask them questions, and we heard about the new scheduling this year. And one of the great things that they were saying was, I don't think a single one of them had seen a fight this year so far at the school. There may have been one somewhere, but they have not seen a fight this year. So they were very excited about that and happy about that. And we had our board luncheon at the high school, and we were lucky enough because Mr. Logan had smoked some pork that was from Berkshire Ridge Farms, where the school purchases some meat for the district. and it was like melt in your mouth, delicious. But we also got to see art from the art department. Some of the students were in there explaining some of the things that they have won awards for, and also the East. Some of the East kids were in the library with their projects that they had done, and they all were just talking about how wonderful Mr. Wisnat was and how they loved him. And so I know I'm sure we were all just kind of blown away by the potential of these kids and the wonderful things that they do that we have right here in North Little Rock. And I've attended a couple of the capital improvement meetings, one at the middle school and one at Lakewood Elementary. I've been disappointed that we haven't had more parents there, so parents out there listening, I encourage you to come. We've got 3 more, I think. One of those virtual or
It is the last one.
The last one.
I'll read those dates at the end.
Okay.
Ms. McLean.
But those have been great because everybody comes with different perspectives and different ideas and things that I wouldn't even think of asking about. So that was really great. And then I did attend the Region 8 meeting of Arkansas School Board Association this week.
Ms. Holcomb.
Not to regurgitate, but yes, the high school luncheon, the 7th and 8th grade campus and Lakewood community meetings, and then regional meeting for ASBA. Also, tomorrow night is senior night, starting at 6:30 at the high school, and we are looking for volunteers, so please reach out to Crystal, and she will help direct you where it is needed. So thank you.
Okay. Oh, I attended North Rock High School to volunteer with retired teachers to help their career, but they're not ready yet, so Ms. McLean and I and Ms. Anita Cameron, we went to help high school seniors to teach them about resumes, how to get student loans and student grants, and this is something that will be open. They say they're going to do it. And then it went to Pikeview with the North Rock Education Foundation. We delivered 16 grants at $16,000 to different schools. And capital improvement at 7th and 8th grade campus plus at Lakewood. And we were blessed to go to Mount Vernon to a regional meeting. The reason I say that we were blessed, we were hit by a deer. A deer hit us. And we were in Dr. Paluska's SUV, and because he took control of it, the deer did not run us off the road. But we didn't go back to look at the deer, but he went back to look at the car. So, so it was exciting. But we were blessed, and I tell you that, a deer at night and you can't see, that was awesome. And then it's no school tomorrow. And then I want to say that I've enjoyed everything, everywhere we've been, and I'm telling everybody, please come out to the Capital Improvement Program. It's a vision that the board, and we want you as a committee to come in, the community stakeholders, to see what it's all about. And thank you. And Dr. Paluska, it's on you.
Yes, ma'am. I'll go very, very quickly. Been to a lot of football games, athletic events, and 2 high school prep rallies, and they've done a great job, Dr. St. Louis and Miss Wisnat. On September 28th, the luncheon mentioned the 7th and 8th grade campus. The football game on the 29th, we did the academic recognitions during the beginning. Our parent advisory on October the 3rd. Also on October the 4th, I serve on the Innovation Hub Advisory Board. On the 5th, I had a wonderful breakfast and connecting with the community with Pastor Crowder, who is the church that's right behind us here. On the 7th, I was honored to speak at the Homer G. Blackwell Memorial Marker, was just downtown in Argenta, very, very historic, celebrating his life that was tragically cut short. That night, members of our executive team participated in the Wildcat Foundation Trivia Night. We started out in 13th place, but we rose to 3rd, losing to the high school team that won. Also on October the 9th, I had the opportunity to throw the first pitch out at our Fall Classic World Series. I attended Literacy Night, Mr. Clark's, on the 10th. Had a wonderful, at the 6th grade campus, did a great job. On the 11th of October, that was National School Lunch Week, so I was serving there at Indian Hills. I had the opportunity with Ms. Hatch as well to visit the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts, and Dr. Ramirez invited us over to talk about a potential partnership. If you've not visited that museum, please do so. We're looking to partner so that one of our grade levels, all of our students have the opportunity to be exposed to the arts. On the 12th, I had my superintendent student advisory. That's always great to connect with kids. We've had our capital improvement projects, our ASBA Regional 8 meeting, and then this week we had our second teacher advisory meeting. That is going extremely well. They want to meet twice a month, so we're going to do that. So great to hear from our teachers, and again, would encourage with our board members to attend our capital improvement projects. Busy, busy.
Okay, thank you. Board involvement. At this time, we will have a legislation update. Mr. Steele.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be quick as well. I think, as most of you heard, finally, Supreme Court ruled really in the LEARNS Act favor. What happened was, and what it was all about, was something called an emergency clause. To pass legislation in the legislature, you have to have a simple majority. Say, for example, in the House of Representatives, you have to have 51 votes. If that particular piece of legislation passes, then it becomes law, but it becomes law July 1st. The way to kind of get around that is to have that same issue voted on again and ask for an emergency clause. The threshold is higher on an emergency clause because it takes not 51 votes, but 67 votes. If it passes with 67 votes and it is deemed an emergency, then it becomes law when the governor signs it. So that saves you some time, especially when you're dealing with something like education. You don't have to wait until July 1 when most of you are already into your planning phase. So the courts upheld that could be done, and now they're going to go back. First meeting is going to be joint budget, and then, Mr. Superintendent, I think the fiscal part will start to come together. Cash flow will start to flow into the districts throughout the state. But after the joint budget meeting, then comes the legislative council meeting. The legislative council is made up of committee chairs and the leadership of the legislature. And they actually act as the legislature when we are not in session. So they will meet, and that will be the final step to actually the release of a lot of the funds that we've been waiting on a long time. So it looks like that piece is over, and funding will be coming soon. But not only funding, but all the other elements of the LEARN legislation will be going into place.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, what's next?
It'll be CPPC. It'll be 10.1 classified personnel. And
Okay.
Ms. Cherry. Welcome, Ms.
You
Cherry.
can have that lovely seat there. So glad to have you.
Oh, thank you. You'll, this chair goes backwards.
Talking to the mic.
And could you state your name for the record, please?
Yeah. My name is Heidi Cherry. I am currently the interim chair of the CPPC. On October 5th, your special meeting, you had an action item, new business, that referred to a CPPC policy 8.46. One of the modifications you approved was the requirement that by October 15th of each year, an election will be held to fill any of the 5 classifications that will not have an active representative. So I'm here to present you with our representatives for this year. The vacancies were for the secretary and clerk classification, and that's filled by Ms. Rhonda Colquitt. And the other vacancy was the food service classification, and that's going to be filled by Ms. Tanya Whitley. We have Mr. Dane Carver, who represents maintenance, operation, and custodians. Mr. Charles Brown, who represents transportation. and myself, who represents aides and paraprofessionals. We also have Ms. Jamsetta Ballard. She is on the committee since last year. She was elected at that time. Our 3 classified employee administrators that are appointed by Dr. Paluski as required by state law are Mr. Smith, the Executive Director of Human Resources, Ms. Mary Lee Dennis, Director of Child Nutrition, and Mr. Hayward Finks, Director of Safety Services. Now, also by law and by our policies, by October we have to be organized, have an organizational meeting in which we elect a chair and a secretary and develop a schedule of our meetings for the year. We'll be doing that on Tuesday at 1:30 at the high school and on Zoom. And in addition to that meeting, we will also be working on reviewing the calendars for the year. We haven't done a lot with them. We've got just the basic, very rough drafts. And I just wanted to say that we look forward to working on our policies with the board, our new and revisions, and anything that you present to the committee. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions from the board members?
Good job.
No?
Thank
Very
you.
Good job, Ms. Cherry.
I'm just glad to hear from the CPPC. Thank
We
you.
are working on one of the things on Tuesday I'm going to try and encourage is we refine our format and policy so that we have more of a community and board relationship. So
Awesome.
that's in the works. We're working on it. Just give us a little time.
Awesome.
Very good.
So glad
Thank
to
you.
have
Thank you, Ms. Chair.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Dr. P.
Yes, ma'am. And it's my understanding, Mr. Smith, there is no LPPC update for this evening. That's correct. That's right. Thank you. Madam President, members of our Board of Education, we'll start with our information item. The first item is 11.1, and that's going to be an update on our 2022-2023 ACT Aspire results, and specifically the SS letter grade, how that's calculated, and welcome our colleague, Mrs. Ya McNulty. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Board President, Dr. Paluski, members of the board. It's good to be here this evening. The last time I was here, we talked about the preliminary data, and so the final data is out there. So we are going to take a look at that data, and we're pleased to have some of our principals here to also support with answering questions. So thank you for allowing us to be here. So as you can see, this is the overview of the areas that we are going to cover. And there are some celebrations with the Office of Educational Policy recognitions for some of our schools, so we'll talk about those schools. And then we'll look a little bit at the ESSA index breakdown, and then also look at the overall results, and then have some conversations around that. So as you know, this is the purpose of the ACT Aspire, and this is the last year we're going to have this assessment. We're moving into the Atlas assessments, which will be a lot different than the ACT, because the focus will not be so much on college and career readiness, but really more on the standards and grade level mastery. And so I'm looking forward to that assessment, because it's going to be more of a, not a fixed formed, more of an adaptive piece. So kind of like the NWEA assessments that we provided to our students. So let's start with some celebrations. So the Office of Education, the University of Arkansas, actually puts out an annual awards for schools that are high poverty schools but still making amazing growth. And so wanted to celebrate the first school, which is Meadow Park Elementary. As you can see, they are top 5 high poverty elementary schools in the central region based on ELA, ACT Aspire growth. And one of the things that I want to point out is that their ELA growth is at 84.71. But when we look at the state's average for ELA and math growth, it is 80.61. So they did an outstanding job in the growth area. So kudos to just the team, the leaders, the students, all of them for the work that they've done. And the other 2 schools that we would like to celebrate is also the North Little Rock High School back there. and also the Center of Excellence. And again, looking at their data, you can see where they made that growth in the math content area. And one of the things I will say is that looking at their state averages too, they were right along the line of the state average. So very proud of them. Kudos to the teams and the work that they're doing. It shows that it's a work that they're just proud. They're doing a great job. All right, so now let's go ahead and look at our ESSA index information. I do think this is important, and I'll go through it really quickly. We have the elementary and middle school spans for how we are graded on one side, and then on the other side is the high school data as far as how we are rated. And the last time we spoke to the team, we talked about just weighted achievement. We gave you the weighted achievement information, which is students who are proficient, who are ready. And so that information was just focused on that area because that's what we had available to us. Now, with the report card, we're looking at not just weighted achievement, which is 35% of our school letter grade, but value-added growth is 50% of the indicators. And then we have SQSS, which is school quality success, which is worth 15% of our school data points. So that's for elementary and middle. And when you look on the other side, you are going to see the high school for weighted achievement is 35. For value added growth is 35. SQSS, which is the school quality, 15. And then they take into account things like graduation rates. If you graduate within 4 years, that's 10%, and then 5 years is 5%. So that's how that category works out. All right, so this is the overall analysis, and it is very similar to the information that we provided before. Looking at the 2022-2023 ACT Aspire scores, when we look at the overall ESSA index scores, we had 62% of our schools demonstrate an increase overall ESSA index growth. I think that's pretty awesome, 8 out of 13 schools. And then when you look at the schools specifically that we are identifying there, Glenview, you already know the data. They grew by 7.5. Meadow Park also by 3.86, and Indian Hills. And it goes down, and Lakewood as well. And one of the things I want to point out is that it is not easy to really move schools. It takes a lot of effort. So when you see these schools that are moving, 1.34, 2.39, it is not easy work. And so I'm just exceptionally proud of the leaders and the teams for the work that they're doing. And then when you look at the further down, some of the bullet points, I think that kind of gives a little bit more information about the areas that we were able to really do well in, and the areas that also shows that there's an opportunity for improvement. So as you can see, 9 out of 13 of our schools showed an increased achievement, showed an increase in the weighted achievement area. So again, that's 69%. And then we have 5 out of 13 schools that showed an increase in our school value added growth, which is the word 50% again of our school letter grade. And then we had 9 out of 13 for school quality success. Again, that's another good data point to look at. But one of the things that I think is astounding and we have to really pay attention to is let's look at the rest of the state. And I think that puts a context to where we are. So when you look at the rest of the state, only 72.4% of our state schools actually moved a letter grade. 72.4%. That is huge. So there's not a lot of movement as far as the letter grades go. Then we had about 14.5% that went up a letter grade, and then about 14.1% that went down a letter grade. And for us, we were able to maintain schools with one school actually moving up a letter grade, which was Lakewood Elementary Schools, moving from that C status to B status, so kudos to them as well. So this is really the quick information to give you a good analysis of where we are, and then you can see the actual individual schools. And so I'm going to roll through them pretty quickly, but if you have any questions, be sure to stop me. What you'll find is there's a commonality in many of the schools' data. I'm looking at the overall ESSA is starting to see an improvement. As you can see, the weighted achievement, definitely, we're moving forward in that area. And then you can see value added growth was the area that was tough for some of us. So let me roll through, go very quickly. This is Boone Park. This is Crestwood. Glenview. Indian Hills. Lakewood. Got that little certificate there. Meadow Park. Some great stuff there. Ridge Road. See some movement. 7th Street. You see the areas where we had some growth. 2 areas there. And then we see the 6th grade campus. Definitely in the school value added growth, you see that they went up, as well as the school quality success. And then 7th and 8th grade campus. Center of Excellence, and you can see their strong areas are definitely within the graduation rates. It's where their big pieces were. Then we're looking at the high school, and you can see their weighted achievement. That amazing growth there was pretty phenomenal. And you've seen this information before that just talks about how we perform in each of those areas. And then this last piece just shares with you, if you look at the last column, you've already seen this kind of information, but it drills down to where they were last year, and did they grow, and how much did they grow by, and if they did not grow, how much did we decrease by? And again, this is our district next step, strategic things that we are continuing to work on, and so we look forward to continuing the work in this area. At this time, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those questions for you.
Ms. Temple?
I appreciate all the work you've done to give us this information. That last slide, that last column is just the growth that was there that did not necessarily show up in the letter grade.
Right.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and in that growth, is that all perform like reading and writing and?
Yeah, it looks like the overall, growth for all of those areas. So earlier we talked about weighted achievement, and now we're covering all of the different areas. And some schools, like for example, Meadow Park, Indian Hills was short, moving a letter grade by 1.04 is all they needed to move up a letter grade. Mr. Clark, what's the exact number did you need? Not even a 0.12 to move. Yeah, I mean, it's that close. And so those are some of the things to pay attention to, but one of the things that I said is that when you see the majority of schools not really making that much of a movement, that's something to consider versus last year. A couple of years ago when we look at the difference, I think we had like 50-point-something schools that improved their overall growth versus this data that we have now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ritter?
Thank you for all the information.
Absolutely.
Wonderful presentation. Not happy about the grades, but hey, but thank you.
Thank you.
Tell me the difference between a weighted achievement and the value added growth, because I see
Yes.
the difference as far as like the numbers.
Yeah.
But we've shown growth. We're doing an amazing job. And 0.12, do you know how frustrating that is for me? And I know it's frustrating for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I just want to call someone up at that.
Yeah, so the weighted achievement is straightforward on students who are ready and exceeding, and so that's how we get that information. And when we think about value added growth, we're looking at multiple areas. We're looking at growth in reading and math achievement, and we're also looking at science, science achievement, science growth, and we're also looking at ALPA, how do our students perform, in the ALPA testing as well. And so there's multiple pieces, but then what we have to do is eventually they disaggregate that data and they break it down by student subpopulations, and they're trying to see, they're tracking the kids, looking at historically where they were and how much did they actually meet the expected goal that they were supposed to hit. So if the students did not meet those expected goals based on that predictor that they had, that hurts. So for many of our schools, we did see those 8 schools that we're talking about, some of them actually hit their, weighted, their value-added growth. When you hit an 80, then you know that you are on the right track. It's a complicated system. I'm hoping the next one is going to be a lot more easier.
And I will say, under the LEARNS Act, there's a conversation going on right now with a work group that's working on maybe looking at a different calculation to determine letter grades next year. So we should know that probably sometime in the spring.
Yes.
They're
Before
working
the
on that
summative.
now to make a recommendation to the state board. Still meet the federal and state accountability, but it
Could look different.
could look different.
Ms. Vale?
I think y'all have just answered my question, because that's what I was going to ask. How will this look next year? Is that calculation going to change, and when will they let us know?
Right.
And now it sounds like we won't know anything until the spring.
It's a
about-
work in progress.
It's a work in progress. And don't forget, the assessment that she's showing now goes away. And there's now a new assessment, which will be the Atlas assessment.
Yeah.
That will be new this year. We've got new standards that we're
Yes.
aligning to, the assessment. We now have an assessment blueprint. We didn't have that before. Basically what that means is it tells teachers what percentage of the test those standards are taught, so that you know you've got to make sure you uncover those standards with students before they get tested.
Absolutely.
So it's possible we won't have a value added and a weight
They will.
adjusted, or
I believe they're still going to have some of those
Yes.
components. We just don't know what those calculations will look like.
Correct.
And another thing that's important to note is that they are now focused on giving text-to-speech for science and for math, so we can focus on content and not just can they read, And so that is also going to help to see if the kids are able to share what they know in those areas. So a lot of things happening.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I was trying to calculate here, but what school had the most growth?
Actually, Glenview had the most growth.
7.52.
Well done.
Yes. Back there.
Mr. Kelly.
Wait.
And we don't want to discount Miss Randall. She
Yes.
was the principal there last
Absolutely.
year, and we want to recognize her for her
Yes.
efforts.
Yeah, great work, great work. And Meadow Park,
behind.
substantial growth.
Next to that would be Meadow Park.
Yes.
So what now are the schools? Well, one question, Mr. Clark. On the attendance, Mr. Clark, you were so close. How did that impact his score?
It was actually the weighted achievement part is where we struggled, which is that 35%.
Okay.
Can you go back, Ms.
So we
McNulty, to show the
showed growth, improved our growth, and improved our SQSS, which has that attendance portion in it.
Yes.
I just want to drill down on that attendance issue. When you say attendance, is that a child missing the entire day of school, or if they come in an hour late, would they be marked for absence for the whole day, or how does that work?
I'm sorry. We'll go for it. The way it's been explained to me is that it is by period, and then they take the average daily, membership, to calculate the days absent.
So we're trying to make sure that kids are missing way more than 10 days. When they hit those 10 days, then those scores drop. And so we just need to make sure that we're paying attention to what those attendance information, is telling us. And I know there's attendance reports and different things the secretaries are sending out, and principals are now also paying attention and trying to create incentives to get kids in school, because after the pandemic, it was hard to make that transition. So that's still a work in progress for our students.
You're ahead of me. That's what I was thinking of. If we just had more incentives to make sure and get kids to school, I think the parents need to know,
And
absenteeism may have caused us
It's huge.
a grade on that. The more incentive. I think Ridge Road, that was part of your incentive program. Am I not mistaken? All those kids at Ridge Road felt like, I had to get to school. I never thought ice cream tasted so good. But it really worked.
Yeah.
So I would certainly advocate how those incentives. We talked a lot last year about the pandemic and the impact it had on the scores.
Yeah.
Are we past that now?
We're starting to move in the right direction. It's starting to feel like we are right there moving. And I think this year, the work that we're doing is going to be even more impactful. So I think starting to see the success is going to support our teachers and our school teams to see that, we can do this work. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Dr. Ye.
Can I just add
Yes.
Can I just add one thing to
Okay.
Mr. Steele's point? One of the things Ms. Barker has been sharing, and I agree with you, Mr. Steele, about making sure our parents are aware. She's been sharing a chart, every time your child is late, it ends up adding to the number of instructional minutes. And, even if you take your child out 30 minutes early, that adds up over time. And I think she's been trying to do some outreach to educate parents of every time they're
Absolutely.
out, this is how much, this is the impact it has.
You add it up at the end of the
That's
month,
right. That's right.
year.
That's right.
I mean, it is. That's significant.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Okay. When I saw the test results for 22, 23,
Yes.
I experienced many different thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the greatest was, why the scores so low? Then I had to reflect back. Like our parents, you want to see a A, B, or C. But the generations have changed now. But after conversation with a coworker, I realized tests do not always reflect of what's going on in the building.
Absolutely.
We know the principals and teachers are doing an excellent job from the reports that you've had previously.
Mm-hmm.
So what am I saying? Students are different.
Yes.
Their learning is different.
Mhm.
Their styles and their variance of language level. And times have changed from the old day. They used to threaten us and tell us if your students don't pass, we'll get your teacher's contract. So it's a new day, new time. But the old day used to say, go to bed early, get a good night's rest, and get up. Children now perhaps don't even have a breakfast to get up to.
Yes.
So we have to understand.
Yes.
Testing was a very stressful time for maybe some of the teachers this year, knowing students didn't get to class, didn't get to school on time, and they wanted them to. But we understand there are problems. But we want all students to receive the best education possible. If your grade was a D last year, it can be better the coming year. I know you all had goals, but you can't, this district, you can't turn it over
Overnight.
in a year.
Mm-hmm.
So we believe in each of you principals and each of you teachers in this North Rock School District. So what I'm saying to you, so go out and be great for the students, for the parents, and for the community. You are awesome. Don't forget to encourage. When I see Miss Boss sitting out there, C to a B. When you look at Meadow Park and Glenview, poverty schools, move. All of these schools that I'm looking at, Mr. Howell, Boone Park, you all are doing it, but you have to keep on pushing. Don't stop now. Move up a little what? Higher. Someday, somehow. You have the support of coaches in your building. And by the way, we were offered some more coaches. And I want to say, just do what you can. We're not here to down you, but you can't change things in a day. But I what? Visionary. Have great expectations.
That's right.
And things will work out for you. And again, I thank you for being a part of the North Rock School District. I do. I love you, and stay prayed up, okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs.
All right.
McNulty.
Thank you.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, our next information item is 11.2. This is the North Little Rock School District. This is going to be a high-level overview of our English language arts and math curricula, and I'll welcome Dr. White, our Executive Director of Curriculum Innovation and Design, and I'll have our dynamic coordinators that are with us tonight to introduce themselves before they provide a high-level overview.
Okay.
Board President, Dr. Pelosi, members of the board. So, Ms. Williams, I appreciate your comment that you made that test results do not always show what's happening in a building. And I'd like to add to that letter grades don't define us. So it's very important that we provide our teachers a roadmap to follow, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So the presentation is our ELA and math curricula overview. So the purpose is to provide an overview of our district's curricula for math and ELA, and then to discuss next steps for obtaining high-quality instructional materials and identified content areas and courses. So as you all know, I've said before that we have the awesome responsibility as a curriculum team to provide leadership, support, and guidance in the development of curriculum, the implementation of curriculum, and the monitoring of curriculum, and you all have the responsibility to approve it. So that's what we're here for tonight. So what is a curriculum? So I thought I'd put this slide in here because I think there's some confusion around curriculum and standards. And so we're going to talk about that in just a minute. So when coordinators speak to you tonight, you're going to hear things like standards and curriculum. You're going to hear scope and sequence. You're going to hear pacing guides. You're going to hear alignment. So I think it's important to know what those pieces are. Ultimately, textbooks and resources are not the curriculum, but the curriculum, as you see here, it's everything that you do to ensure that students meet those learning goals. We know ultimately our goal is for students to achieve and to grow, but also a good solid curriculum provides equity among our schools so that when students transfer from school to school, we know that what they're teaching in one building, they're also teaching in another. So you're going to hear tonight coordinators talk about these pieces here, and you have access to a lot of these. There's some live links that you have. But before they speak to you, I'd like to simply go over what standards are. So standards are what students should know and be able to do within a particular content area. The curriculum, as I just said to you all, is everything that you do to ensure that students meet those standards. And then also alignment. So alignment really is access, once again, to ensure that students meet those standards. So once again, the coordinators put in a lot of work to ensure that there is alignment among the standards and, of course, our high-quality instructional materials that you all have already approved, and they're going to talk about that tonight. So we're going to start with Ms. Edwards.
Good evening. Madam President, Dr. Pelosi, members of the board. My name is Marla Edwards, and I'm the coordinator of elementary mathematics. We're going to talk just really quickly about some of the shifts that occurred with the new standards that we are teaching with this year. The big idea in general is that they have been simplified. The wording has been simplified. Many standards that were multi-sentences, multi-bullet points have been divided into separate standards, and the language has been simplified. The other big shift, and this is K-8, is that there is a better balance between procedural fluency and conceptual understanding. So there are now standards that identify by the end of the school year students should master certain fluency facts. That has not been present. Before we were very conceptual understanding heavy. So this balance will be, I think, very beneficial for our students. The last thing that we are seeing also K-8 is that data analysis is now consistent beginning in kindergarten and all the way through the 8th grade. For our elementary math guaranteed standards, a committee was put together. Any teacher, MCL, coach, building leader was invited to have their voice heard. And we narrowed all of the standards down to 8, which we are calling guaranteed standards. That doesn't mean teachers aren't teaching all of the standards, they are, but we have to narrow our focus for assessment and intervention purposes. And so those guaranteed standards, those 8, are the ones that were deemed, using a very strict criteria, to be the 8 standards that if students didn't master would be very detrimental to their ability to move to the next grade level. So if we can guarantee that our students learn these 8 standards to mastery, we know we can guarantee their success at the next grade level. And with that focus, we think that is actually possible. We are very blessed, I must say, with the resource that we use for elementary math, Eureka Math. as our high-quality instructional material. It truly offers the conceptual understanding and the procedural fluency that is needed. It does cover all of our standards, save just a handful, and I have put together a little bit of assistance for teachers to know how to fill those gaps. Ultimately, most of those gaps can actually be filled within the resource, just possibly a different grade level or in a different unit of study. Eureka also offers assessments. Again, our teachers, it's been recommended to them that they use the assessments that align to those guaranteed standards so that we are not over-assessing our students on the other standards. Again, all standards are being taught. We're just focusing assessment and intervention on those guaranteed standards.
That was pretty good.
Thank you. I am now going to wear the hat of my colleague, Debbie Higgins, who conveniently decided to leave the country. So I will just talk through her slides for her tonight. Same idea with the 6 to 8 standards. That data analysis is has continuity now between K-8. If we move on to some of the high school courses, the big idea for Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 is that the standards have been uncoupled. So in other words, there was some crossing of standards between those two courses previously, and they have been completely separated. So Algebra 2 teachers know exactly what students should come knowing from Algebra 1. Algebra 1 teachers know what they must prepare their students for to go to Algebra 2. And then in geometry, just the big idea here for shifts is that we are offering now sort of the real world connection for their geometric thinking. Generally, the same practices were used to determine the guaranteed standards for the secondary levels, and that's 6th through 8th grade, and then Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and just Algebra 1 and geometry. Ms. Higgins did some work on developing pacing calendars and scope and sequence to make sure that those standards, especially the guaranteed standards, have ample time to be taught. Also, their high-quality instructional material has been expanded to include 6th grade, so they are using Envision, and that is now has continuity between 6th grade and 12th grade. And assessments are built into Envision. They can actually be built digitally by teachers, by coaches, and by the curriculum team. And speaking of that, you all approved the purchase of DNA through the Renaissance Company, and our team is working right now on developing some common assessments, interim assessments that will be assessing those guaranteed standards. We're going to work on building them and learning the platform. Eventually, we will include MCLs and coaches, and eventually hope to pass that understanding along to teachers as well. While we build those assessments, we're very careful to remember what students will be seeing on the Atlas assessment. And so we will be building assessments that teach them some of the things, just even procedurally, that they will need when they're taking the test, such as, do they know how to drag and drop? Do they have multiple choice answer? Do they have multiple check answer? We can build assessments that have all of those things in them.
English language?
Okay, I thought you had a question. Hello, Madam President and Dr. Paluski and members of the board. I'm Pamela Chris. I'm coordinator of early childhood and school readiness, and I'm going to talk to you all this evening about the revised academic standards. It has the K2 shift, but since my co-partner also decided to take a vacation, I'm going to do K5. And the biggest shifts I want to speak about, you all already have this information, so I'm not going to go over every bullet point, but the organization of the standards, it was simplified so it could align with the science of reading, and the standards have also been more clarified across the grade levels to provide clear, expectation of what students need to know and be able to do by the end of the year. Another big shift I want to talk about that's in the standards that teachers are also having to shift to is that handwriting standard. Handwriting at one time was only in, we saw it in kindergarten, and then the law passed where the cursive writing was only in 3rd grade. Now you will see handwriting standards from K to 5th grade. Students still need that automaticity with the fluency with handwriting for note taking, and in college, and they won't complain that they can't take notes. So cursive writing has actually been expanded to 5th grade, and that's a big shift because cursive writing has been eliminated from the classrooms. Another big shift I want to talk about is what we had to do is the piece of the phonological and phonemic awareness. That's the shift that it was to K2. Now it's just been taught in K1. And when I talk about phonemic awareness, it's that piece that is going to give us our biggest buck when we start talking about kids learning how to read. So we're only going to focus on segmenting and blending. And when I say segmenting and blending, how many phonemes? Cat, cat, blend, cat. Those are the pieces we're going to focus on. The other pieces that the standards had in there, if we can get kids to that level, then they'll be able to manipulate the sounds and decode words with that piece. Now, the phonological awareness, that's that big piece. That's what I'm telling my pre-K teachers. They got to have pre-K 4 babies master those phonological awareness pieces. That's syllables. How many syllables are in basketball? Basketball. Those pieces will be taught in pre-K. So the standards the shift was K5, but of course I aligned the standards also even with pre-K so that we can be across the board with it all. And another big shift was in our phonics. It was only in 2016 standards. It was just K2. Now phonics standards are K5, which is great. So with that piece there, we're looking at more of those morphological standards. That means those prefixes and suffixes that get kids caught up when it's vocabulary, and that is really, really important piece that teachers are saying, our kids are struggling with that. Now it's in the standards, and the standards are still so, you can go to the next slide. So, and the standards are they're written in such parent-friendly language. You will hear all of us say that, and so it eliminates that extra jargon that, those 2016 standards were so broad that even teachers, when we started talking about unpacking them, or deconstructing, it was too much. But now these standards are, a parent can pick up the standard and understand what their child needs to be able to master by the end of the year. And that's what we want to build that capacity in parents also. The guaranteed standards, same thing that Marla said so well. We at ELA, we also formed a committee, a collaborative team that included principals, MCLs, and teachers. We met with them, and we also chose 8 guaranteed standards. And these are the standards that we're saying that we're going to ensure students master by the end of the year. Not students, but all students. We don't want to leave anyone out with that piece there. Our HQIM, the sequencing, the contents and skills, wit and wisdom, we were able to build our pacing guides in scope and sequence, looking at the revised standards and including those in so we could actually have a revised scope and sequence with that piece there. And again, our HQIM is wit and wisdom. Now, there was a gap in our phonics for 3.5. We were using just words in 3.5. Just words is a tier 2 intervention. The purpose was for intervention, but teachers were using it for tier 1. And we did find a phonics program 4.3.5 that teachers are implementing in the classroom, so they can teach those morphological skills that kids need in grades 3 through 5. Assessments are already built in our HQIM, and those assessments, the teachers, they don't really have to think about it. It's already in there. The end of the module unit, every 9 weeks, they are to assess their students there. They even have checks for understanding where they can actually, do that every single day or throughout the lessons. And also, they have question sets that they could pull from. So the assessments are already in wit and wisdom for them to do it.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Agnes Cruz. I am the coordinator for secondary literacy. Dr. Paluski, Madam President, members of the board, thank you for having us again. We love coming over here and talking to you guys. For the big shifts in 6 through 12 in ELA, the biggest one was the learning progression. They made the standards clear to where they build upon each other, and that helps that vertical alignment from grade level to grade level. Also, they added a recitation standard, which is going to be a standard to help the students improve their lexical knowledge and their communication skills, as you saw our sixth graders do today. So that is going to be part of the standards for 6 through 12. And then much like in elementary school, 9 and 10 had the exact same standards. They separated those. Now 9, 10th, 11th, and 12 have their own, again, to allow that vertical alignment. For our guarantee standards, it was a collaboration with building leaders, teachers, MCLs. We all did the same work. In secondary, it looked a little different because it was content area based. And they chose the standards. We looked at the blueprints from the atlas that tells us how many questions are for each one, and we use them based on where we need them, where we have the highest need with students. Those were our guarantee standards. Once again, they are the ones that the students are going to be able, what the students are going to be able to do by the end of the school year. They teach them all. But in language arts, the standards build upon each other and they spiral. So they picked the standards. I created the scope and sequences and the pacing calendars based on that. And also our HQIM is my perspectives now that was implemented 6 through 12 to allow for that vertical alignment. And also the purpose of the scope and sequences and the pacing calendars is to also, when a student goes from one campus to another, there's that continuity there. So that's what this work is supporting. We study this resource, I'm sorry. We studied the resource, we looked for some gaps, but because we did the correlations with our standards, we're able to cover everything, whatever is not in the resource. We have supplemental materials that we've created for the teachers. The platform has assessments, and they have assessment banks. So the teachers do the they do the assessments frequently based on the standards that they're taught, they're teaching. They choose items aligned to the guarantee standards so they can inform their instruction. And that way they see how the kids are progressing. And again, like my colleague said, we are also developing interim assessments through the DNA platform, again, aligned to our guarantee standards. And that's us.
So before we get into next steps, just want to know if you all have any questions. You all do not have those pacing guides tonight. I will link those in my weekly board report on tomorrow, so you can take a look at that. But like I said, we just simply wanted you to understand the scope of our work and how we're ensuring alignment among the standards and, of course, those resources that we're using. Are there any questions?
I have one quick question about math. I know that math looked different coming home. I was trying to help my grandson with some of his in years past, and I think it changed a lot under Common Core. Now, if I'm doing that same, am I going to be able to do it, or is it going to be?
How we teach has not really changed, and we really shouldn't blame Common Core, and really there isn't blame to be had. So when we were growing up, we were taught a procedural fluency. We were taught to memorize facts, to memorize steps to solve a problem. Math should be applied. So if all you have done is memorize steps, you're not going to be able to apply that understanding in a real-world situation. So that's where the conceptual understanding comes in. And all the research that has been done in the last couple of decades shows that everything leans toward conceptual understanding. Not everything, I'm sorry. There still is a need for the procedural fluency, but without the conceptual understanding, the application cannot happen. And so when you see things broken down, and you see the memes on Pinterest about, how many cats are there when the moon is purple, there is a rhyme and reason to it. It just looks different than what we grew up with because we're teaching the concept, not just the steps.
I just know it makes it a little bit challenging.
It does. It does. There is, within our resource, there are parent newsletters that the teacher can send out with each new skill that's taught. that kind of takes them through step by step. What they're doing, why they're doing it. I'll be honest, it's hard for our teachers. You have to really dig in. You have to really understand. I was not a math person growing up. If you had told me 20 years ago I would have this position, I would have laughed in your face. I was in ELA all day long. When I started teaching math, it clicked because I had to break it apart for my students. And then I was hooked. So it takes a lot, but it is what our students need. I believe that.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Reddy?
Hence everything that you just said. I pick up my granddaughter after school, and when I ask her, does she have homework, I go, wait till your mom get off work. Thank you for your report.
Yes, ma'am.
I have no questions. I liked the breakouts. Thank you for all the hyperlinks. I stayed up all night clicking each one.
I'm glad that cursive writing is back. And I know I saw things about graphs in there a lot, but does that include the Venn diagrams? And do Venn diagrams start now early on, or?
Venn diagrams can start at any grade, kindergarten.
Great.
Yes.
That's
And
great.
across content
And
areas.
they can be
Yes,
used,
content, so
yes,
true.
in all content areas.
Thank you very much.
Good job. No questions.
How much contact do you all have with teachers?
Oh.
We
A
have
lot.
a lot of contacts. As
Daily,
a matter
I
of
would
fact,
say.
I was just, someone called me out today at one of the schools because I'm only one person. So I cannot get to all the schools plus my pre-K site. So, but I did tell her I'll be there next week to sit down. Yes.
We do all this work with them too.
Yes. Mhm.
They have all of this, and we talk to them. And even before the resource was implemented for 612, that work started last semester with me and the teachers through their PLCs and their team meetings.
Yes.
Okay, the math major here. I got you all report back in September, and you were showing the improvements that were made, and that was on a very positive level. Why did we recognize you? Because of what, math person? Because you had done all the grades had gotten up in the schools. Why? You math person I'm looking at.
I'm sorry. I guess I didn't understand the question. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying you did so well when
Oh.
you all gave the report in September.
Thank you.
That you were telling about how the grades had actually improved in the math.
Yes.
That was the commentary. And you can, and Dr. Hooper, she used to do this. We used to know where you were all the time. She had a scale that I would know how many buildings you had been to. And I hope she can continue to do that to help you all. You know, because she says, sometime I can't get to another school, I can't. But to me, that was such an asset saying, wow, they're really working. I was telling Dr. Paluski, they are just everywhere. But every month, I would know how much you had worked. And so just keep up the good work. I'm very proud of you. Okay?
Yes,
And you-
ma'am.
And I know no names, but thank you. You're a good hire, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, ladies.
And thank you.
All right, so
Dr.
the very
White,
last piece.
for your adoption timeline here from September to October.
We'll just wrap
Yes,
it up.
absolutely. You know, we know that there are courses that have outdated resources or no resources at all, and so we're working towards that. We've got Dr. Harbin here because she will be the key facilitator in science. But just to let you know the courses that we're going to be looking at this year, I made myself a note. So K-8 Science, K-8 Social Studies, also high school science and social studies, and that will encompass civics, economics, U.S. and world history. Also pre-cal, calculus A, B, and BC as well. And then also biology, chemistry, environmental science, and physical science. We're looking at that. And then, of course, critical reading and strategic reading. So those are the courses that we'll be looking at adopting resources for this year with implementing, of course, next year. Also, we know there's some policies that we need to revise around curriculum development and then also selecting and adopting resources too. So we're looking at that, and hopefully we can bring something back to you probably in November. The other thing is we'll come back to you in a few weeks and we'll talk about our math and literacy block. So we will actually make the connection of how teachers are using this roadmap and implementing it during the day.
Very good. Are there further questions, board members? If not,
I was going to ask one thing. I remember the old textbook committees.
That's exactly.
Are we still like adopting a textbook,
right.
or
That's
are we
exactly
looking
right.
at just online resources, or?
So, of course, the resources come in print and digital options,
Yeah,
and
it's
so typically
both.
we buy both.
That's right.
But that's exactly what this is, the old textbook committees. If you will.
And I do want to add, I mean, what Dr. White and her team have been working off of is, remember that we had the curriculum management audit. So if you go back to the curriculum management audit in the appendix, they looked at every single course that has a curricular, doesn't have a curricular, has materials. There's a lot in there where as they're mentioning, where we don't have high quality materials in so they're prioritizing, working on that so we can get our teachers. And so they're working on a cycle so that we want to make sure all of our courses are, we can't do it all at one time. But I applaud the work that they've been working on.
Okay.
Yes,
Are
ma'am.
there further questions? If not, thank you all for
Thank
being
you.
on
Thank you.
board. Clap, clap.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, our next information item is 11.3 and our annual report. And I know that Mr. Barnes is going to do a high-level overview. You have a copy, a printed copy that looks awesome. Mr. Barnes always outdoes himself, so I know he's going to give this a very high-quality summary.
All right, good evening, board members. Dr. Paluski, this again in the annual report. Department of Education says we have to present information to the public to let them know the previous year. So this looks at all of the district's activities for the 2022-2023 school year. And this information will also be posted online under state required information. This information just kind of looks at demographics, so you can see this was our enrollment on October 1st, 2022, and the enrollment kind of fluctuates throughout the year, so it's not the same enrollment number that we had at the end of the school year, but this is just to kind of show you some information on our demographics, the makeup of our district. This is just information on our employees by licensed and classified. We have 31 National Board Certified Teachers. As you know, that's the kind of like the gold standard in teacher qualification, just kind of it's a voluntary process, just showing that they're going above and beyond to be prepared for teaching and learning. This financials information, got this information, of course, from Mr. Brown, but just kind of showing you how much money we had, how much money we spent, and then the money that was transferred to the building fund. Child nutrition, of course, we're fortunate in our district that our students can, all of our students eat free due to our participation in the community eligibility provision. So no matter a student's income, household income, all of our students eat free in the district. This is just some highlights of what took place over the last school year. Again, some highlights. We had our quarterback was a Scholar Athlete of the Week named by a particular bank, and we had some students recognized by the College Board for their work on the advanced placement. We had our cheer team win the state championship. We also had the Crestwood Elementary students, Quest students. They did well at the Innovation Challenge. 6th grade and COE were recognized for beating the odds award. You all approved the reconfiguration transformation plan for 7th Street Elementary School. Our varsity girls basketball team went to state. Unfortunately, they did not win like they did in 2022. However, we're proud of them. They are state runner-up. Ms. Griffin won the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. Ms. Salam, as you know, is the reigning Teacher of the Year for the state of Arkansas. We're so proud of her. And then Synergistic recognized us for our cost-cutting measures in energy. This is just a kind of profile of our 2020 class of 2023, just information on them. This is information on you, just talking about your board training hours, which were approved at the January 19th board meeting, so I just got it from there. Again, you all were recognized for School Board Excellence and Leadership Awards. So you all are the reigning board for that. And so again, congratulations on that. And as I've mentioned before, this annual report will be available on our website, so all of our stakeholders can peruse it at their leisure. Are there any questions?
Good job, Mr. Barnes.
All right, thank you.
When do you sleep?
Didn't the
I don't.
didn't the chess team go to the championship game? Just check that.
I know the year
I think
before
they went and
did, but
didn't win, but I think they went to the championship.
okay, I'll have to look at that. All right then.
Which
Thank
team
you.
was that, Mr. Still?
Chess team.
Oh, chess team. Thank you, Mr. Barnes.
Thank you.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, the last information item that we have is that we had been talking about a survey around capital improvement projects as we've been doing our forums, and we thought it would be best if we came and showed you the draft, so to get your feedback. If there's a question we're not asking, you want to ask, so I'll turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Brown and Ms. Rubel, who designed behind the scenes, who's going to drive and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Paluski and members of the board. So just for those people out there that may have just tuned in on YouTube, we have conducted two of our 6 community forum meetings. We have 4 of those meetings left. They are Monday, October 23rd at Glenview, Tuesday, October 24th at 7th Street, Monday, October 30th at Ridge Road, and Monday, November 6th, virtual meeting. All those begin at 6 p.m. And the purpose of our meetings is to disclose the district capital improvement project priorities and to facilitate public involvement and feedback on those priorities, and to allow question and answers by the public regarding those priorities. And one of the commitments that we had made to the board was to conduct a capital improvement project questionnaire. And we have the draft of that we're going to share with you tonight. This is not active and it's not in its final form, but I just want to go through and show you the questions that we're asking, how we're collecting the data, and gather any feedback you may have regarding any additional information you think we need to ask or may collect. So the survey starts off just asking a person, do you live within North Little Rock city limits? And of course you could have the choices there, yes, no, no, but my children attend school in North Little Rock, no, but I'm an employee of North Little Rock School District. So this allows us to collect from people that do live there, people that may not live there, and also people who have children that attend school but not live in the zone, and also collects data from our employees who may not be living in North Little Rock. Okay? Oh, just say yes. The next one is, do you live within the North Little Rock School District boundaries? So, you know, the first question, city limits, is different from our school boundaries. So some people that live within North Little Rock's city limits are not North Little Rock School District taxpayers. So we're asking that question, do you live within the school district boundaries? Are you a taxpayer? Okay. The next question is, do you have children attending North Little Rock School District? And we're collecting that because you may have taxpayers and voters that that have children that attend. They may not attend public school, they may attend private, and you also have people who do not have school-age children that we would want to collect information to as well.
As I just looked at that, should we add charter in there too? No private/charter school?
Yes. Well,
I just saw that. I know.
And then we're going to collect data. Which school does your child or children attend within the district? You can select as many as you have children and where they go.
So I noticed that there's a star, which means you've got to answer before you go to the next.
Yes.
So if you said you don't have any children, then
You would
it
not
needs
get
to
that
be. You won't get it. Okay. Okay.
Yes, so these are interactive.
Okay.
So not everyone would see all questions. We're
Okay.
going to take this as a taxpayer and as if you had children in the
Okay.
district so that
Okay.
we can show you all the questions.
Okay.
Depending on your answer, you may not see some of these questions
Okay.
Right, it might
because they
end.
don't apply.
Okay.
Okay? Good point. The next one identifies the three top priorities for the district. The construction of the new middle school for grades 6 through 8 is the first priority. Second priority is Old Main renovation for classroom space for the Center of Excellence. The third priority is demolition of Old Poplar Street Middle School, the administrative annex on Poplar Street, and the demolition of Police and Courts building, which was donated by the city of North Little Rock, and the construction of a parking lot with lights and cameras on that site. And then we're gauging, what we're asking here is input from the public to gauge interest. Please check the boxes below for additional projects that you think the district should consider. And these are a list of topics, these are a list of projects that we have, that's either been discussed in prior board meetings in prior years, or it could be projects that have been mentioned to us by staff members or community members. So this is a list of things that we have heard that there was an interest in. So we're going to gauge the public on this. So we've got your three priorities, but then we're going to say, are you interested in any of these? So the construction of a baseball softball complex at Old Poplar Street, that's been discussed by the board before in prior years. Construction of an aquatic center, that's something that has been discussed recently. Construction of an indoor sports complex, that actually came from input from the community and some of our staff members on that interest. And then, of course, the fourth option there is I have no interest in additional projects beyond the top three.
Janet, will you roll back up for me, please, ma'am? Okay, priority number 3, that's what I wanted to read here. Demolition of the Old Poplar Street.
Right, so that's kind of all the demolition and taking the old police and courts
Mhm.
and a parking lot.
So, and construction of parking lot with lights and cameras on that site. So, correct me if I'm wrong. So am I reading it as in the parking lot and lights and cameras on the
Police and court site.
on the police and court site?
We'll
But
make that
then
clear.
further down, it states an additional construction site for the police and court. So that's a little confusing and contradicting. Okay.
So, I mean, the board has, what we have, the district has established that just those old structures need to come down. So we're
Agreed.
sort of gauging,
Sure.
the initial thought of the district is to build a parking lot, but we've been approached about the possibility of a indoor sports complex instead of a parking lot there in that area. So this is just gauging interest. Do you think that's a good idea? Would you support that as a community member? Yes or no? You know.
So maybe have a question on those number 4, maybe add a number 5. Do you want a parking lot where the old police and court station was? Because, and I bring this up because there is multiple conversations going right now within the community that a parking lot is not needed in some aspects. So that's why it's confusing and it's contradicting. So maybe adding a number 5 to that option of, do you even want another parking lot in that area? Just to help kind of clarify. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, and we debated this slide a lot because we thought about just taking these out because when you go forward, it's going to ask the community, what are your top 5 priorities?
Okay.
So we're still going to kind of get to this, and that's where we were debating it too, is by putting this in here confusing because, one, we wanted to tell the public what you all identified as priorities, but now we want to get your input as to what are your priorities. So maybe after this discussion, maybe we should take it out, but that's why I wanted to come to you first.
So I've gotten 2 text messages just from this saying that's contradicting.
So we can just take it out.
Letting you know, I've gotten 2 text messages stating that, so that's why I bring it up.
So we can take it out because you'll see when you go forward,
Yeah.
you're going to see this again.
Okay.
And that's good. That's why we're coming to see clarity.
Yep.
And if we don't want people to be confused, we want to be as clear as possible.
Right.
We'll just remove that, but let them know what the district's priorities are up to this point.
Well, you could, if you go back to 3, you could do demolition of Poplar Street and then have those 2 options of uses of Poplar Street below it to pick, and then demolition of the courts, and then have the 2 options down below that
You
to
could.
pick those 2 options.
That's a thought.
Within priority 3.
Yes,
Sure.
within priority 3, and I don't think I don't think that'd be
And
confusing.
then
Well, when you see when we go
take that other
forward,
slide
we
out.
might have to come back to see. I think that's a good idea too. But I think when you go forward, you're going to see, and then I think we should come back to this because once you see when you're going forward, is this confusing? And
Okay. Well, let's move forward, and then we'll
Yeah.
come back. What slide was this? 6? Okay, we'll come back to 6.
Page 6, yeah.
Okay.
So now we're asking you to rank your top 5 priorities.
Okay, so out of here, this is priority number 1. These are your options.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
So the prior slide identifies the district's top 3 priorities.
Got
Now
it.
we're asking the public,
What
tell
they're-
us what your first priority would be.
Yes.
Okay.
So you choose one
Uh-huh.
from this list.
So middle school, Old Main, parking lot, and then baseball field, aquatic center, or indoor sports complex. So what we want to come back to you with is, here's the data of what the community has said their top 5 priorities are, which might be in alignment with what the board has discussed, or it might be completely different.
So for the public also, this is our first time as board members seeing this survey as well.
Yes.
So that's why we are taking a moment to read this through.
Sure, yes. And so we go through and we ask the same question for priority number 2. So it's the same list,
Okay,
but they're choosing what would be their second priority.
got it.
Go on, scroll down, and we're asking for a 3rd priority.
Okay.
They would make a selection, and then it asks for a 4th and a 5th.
Okay. And all this is going to be like on one page where I don't need to go back a page because I've decided my 2 and 3 need to switch.
It's all on one page.
Very good.
Yes. And then a 6th priority as well. We had 6 total, so.
What is,
Question came up the other night when we sent out this survey, and suppose they, I think you heard it before. Suppose they said we want Old Main and don't put the middle school. So therefore, you'd have to go back. Would you explain that process again? Because I heard you explain it when we were to someone who brought up that question.
So the question was, what if the millage doesn't pass?
right.
If, let's assume for a moment, that the board decided to go to the voters for a millage increase for the new middle school, and let's assume that millage fails. And the question was, what would happen? So there are 2 options. The board could ask for another millage vote at the next election. Or if the board voted not to do that, then we would release the $20.8 million in funding that was awarded to North Little Rock. That money goes back to the state. They determine how they use it. They may award it to another school further down the list, or they may keep those funds in reserve and use them in the next cycle. I don't know what they would do with those. But we, as North Little Rock, once we turn back funds, you have to reapply. So you have to make sure a new middle school's in your next facility plan, and you have to make sure that you fill out an application for partnership, and it is ranked according to other projects that are resubmitted, that are submitted and considered for awarding. And there's no guarantee, because you got it this year, that you would get it you would get an additional award in 2 years. It all depends on how your priority ranks within the state for school districts that have requested funding, and how much money's available and how many of those they can fund on the list. So there are several projects that are not funded because there's not sufficient funding in the state. We were just lucky enough to be high enough on the list to receive that funding opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep, let's keep moving.
All right. And then what we, a disclaimer here, what we're going to do is to try to look at the cost of each of these projects and try to assign that a specific millage value. So I'm still working with gathering some data on the cost of some of these new projects we've been talking about. And I'm also going to work with Scott Beardsley on doing a check behind me to make sure, for instance, that 1.6 tax mill is what we need to get only the middle school done. And then if you'll see the next question. So that question says, would you support 1.6 mill tax increase to construct a new middle school grades 6 through 8 on the current site behind Target? So we're trying to be as specific as we can to let people know what's being considered. And the 1.6, again, is my estimate at this point, but I'm going to double check that with Mr. Beardsley. He's the expert on the millage value. So, and we give examples on what that would cost. So the example we give, the first line there, a first example is for $100,000 in property, or real or personal property. 1.6 mill tax would increase your taxes by approximately $32 a year, or $2.67 per month. And then we give a line there of a $200,000 line. And of course, you just keep multiplying that. If you had a $300,000 line, you would multiply the 100,000 values by 3. Or if you had a $50,000 line, you would divide example 1 by 2. So those are benchmarks there for people to gauge how this would impact them.
Okay, so for clarification, we're asking 1.6 for the middle school, 1.0 for the Old Main.
Yes.
And that equals the 2.6, which
Correct.
we are asking the voters for and what we have spoken about at the community meetings.
Correct.
Just wanted clarification for that
Yes.
out there.
That's how the 2.6 is divided up, in my opinion, but I will vet these numbers with Mr. Beardsley before it's released publicly.
Sure.
Yes, so the second one is 1.0 mills for the Old Main and the demolition of the properties that we've talked about. So if you'll scroll down, we've estimated that a baseball, softball complex would cost 0.62 mills at the Poplar Street. So we're going to gauge the public interest on that. If you'll scroll down. The next one, we estimate 1.24 mills would be needed to construct a new indoor sports practice complex. And the next one is 1.28 mills would be needed to construct an aquatic center. And then the final question on the survey is, would you be willing to help with this campaign? And it allows them to type in their name and their phone number for us to collect that data to reach out to people who would want to help support any of the items that are on the list. So that's the basic structure of our, you've seen all the questions that are available. And again, if some of the questions don't apply, depending on how you've answered, you won't see those. If you're not a taxpayer in North Little Rock, you won't see those millage questions.
Okay,
I do.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just, as we were kind of concluding, I would suggest, see with the board's input, we should make a comment section.
Okay.
I know in some of our surveys we have not done that, and I think that does give a taxpayer, you know, or you're right, or maybe there's a project out there that is important to them that we didn't list, and I mean, I think it's always good to.
Okay, Ms. Walker, Ms. Temple.
Back at the beginning, because I don't remember now, is it clear that all of these things are contingent on increased funding? I mean, is that clear at the beginning of the survey that?
I don't know that we've made that point, but we can, if you'll make note, we will begin.
Yeah, that's a
the
good,
survey.
that's a good point. I don't remember reading that we've said in order to.
And, yeah, I think that needs to be real clear that
And-
this is what we would like to do, but it would require additional funding. And then do we need to, early on, give someone, the option to say nothing, that they don't think you should do anything at this point in time?
Yes.
So that's what I was gonna say too, because the asterisk, I noticed on, I think it was 14 or 16 for your page, I noticed the asterisk on each one, but like, you don't give a definition of why that asterisk is there, if that makes sense.
It says right here, indicates a required question.
Okay, so when I saw that asterisk, I'm thinking in my mind that there's something else to that key. So maybe piggybacking on what Cindy just stated, we do need to say, if this is a priority for you, this millage has to pass. You also stated something, Brian, the other day during our community meeting that we have put how much money back for Old Main? You had a number out there that we have committed so much money for Old Main, and then maybe clarify that if that money set aside is from the millage, if the millage is passed, or is that like what we would consider real money on what we have on the bank books right now?
So there are no funds right now committed to the renovation of Old Main. Where you saw the listing of Old Main and a price tag was
Right.
our estimate. That was actually in the expenditure section. So what we had was a revenue and an expenditure section. And in the revenue, we were projecting all the revenue that we had, including the state funding. And then in the expenditures, we were listing what we expected that project to cost. Old Main was on the list at $13 million, 13 or 15 million. I don't remember the number specifically, but the difference between revenue and expenditures is $33.5 million. That's where the 2.6 mils comes in, is we need 2.6 mils to make up the difference in projected revenue for the capital improvement projects and expenditures. So the difference, 33.5 million, equates to 2.6 mils in our community based on our tax base.
Are we not putting more things in that can get confusing because
That's what I'm afraid
we're really the millage, like the line item that you have in the presentation that we're doing at these meetings is just the middle school and Old Main. And that's 2.6 mils. And that's what we're talking about at the capital improvement meetings. So when we start putting in a softball complex or a aquatic, it seems like it's adding a whole lot more things in there, and we're kind of losing a focus of what our goal is, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just know in listening to the community, I keep hearing about, investment in sports complex. And, when I meet with the coaches and, one of the things I've heard is, when's the last time we've invested in sports facilities? And I think it's been maybe since the stadium. And so the only reason we're putting those in there is because those are things that we're hearing, and we wanted to give them a voice to see where our community is outside of, this is what the board has said their priorities are, but these are things that I know I've been hearing as I've been listening to folks, and what about these other sports-related facilities? And so we thought if we were going to ask the question, now would be the good time to. But it's up to you. I mean, that's why we're coming to you right now with feedback before we even send it out to.
Would it be helpful to include maybe at the very beginning of the survey? This survey collects data on the district's top 3 priorities, and then we're also going to ask you about some additional projects just to gauge public interest, to see if I guess the reason you may want this data is because if you go to the voters for a millage question and a majority of taxpayers are interested in something in addition to the middle school and the demolition in Old Main, demolition of properties and the renovation of Old Main, then you may want to know that prior to going to the voters for a millage request.
Or in lieu of. Let's say it comes back and says the number one priority is a middle school and a sports complex.
Right.
Maybe, who knows what we're going to.
I like
might be
the
Old Main or Old Main might be first. I mean,
I like the wording that you just said because it's confusing, kind of. It's like, am I thinking about a millage for these three and possibility these or what have you? We need a breakdown. So when you're actually clicking, you know what you're clicking for.
But we can certainly make this about the top three and not include the others if that's the direction that we get. We certainly can.
I like the idea that it's out there, but I would have preferred to let them tell us some of the other options.
In the comments.
In the comments. I would prefer the focus would be the top three. This is what we're looking for. If we can get some funding, do you approve of this? And by the way, what else would you like to see? And let them tell us instead of it's kind of looking like we also want those as our projects.
We got too much on there.
Okay.
Really, being honest. Because when I'm looking at it, as you stated, I'm going like, what do they want now? You got this, you got the complex,
Right.
you got this. And if you put the comments under those three basic things we're looking for and let it ride, let it go. But you'd also tell them within this, you'd also mention about the tearing down of the buildings. That's a part of the millage, right?
yes.
Yes, ma'am.
But you put the thing down that's a part of that millage, because otherwise, I'm seeing so much up here, I don't know what I'm voting for.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line.
The other thing I just thought of, what we could do if the board is we could get a small group of parents as a parent-focused group and let them.
Test this.
Sure. I mean, we have time.
Parent group, don't you?
We do. It doesn't meet until November the 6th, but I could, or if you have a recommendation. I mean, that's just another option to set a group of parents down and say. I'm sorry?
I was just apologizing because I hit him with my foot.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Here's my concern. I hear this and I understand what their voices, and I agree to an extent. Here's my concern with that. I don't want this to be another Old Main. Well, y'all didn't do Old Main. Does that make sense? So from the last millage, it was A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. And then we had an asterisk, if there's any money left, Old Main. But it seems like the public only remembers Old Main and not the asterisk that stated if there was any money left. So I just don't want a repeat of that. So that's where I'm agreeing with Rochelle and Valerie and Dorothy right now. But yes, we want their input, but we don't want the repeat of the situation from 2012. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hence why I said it's too much.
Well, we have
Right, that's what I'm saying.
in the itemized list, 13 million for Old Main. But the bottom line of it all is that if the expense, let's just say that middle school came out as the number one thing, middle school cost more, then we'd have to pull money that we had on that line item for Old Main to go to complete the middle school, because maybe it goes up to $450 a square foot in the process of building. Or So that's what I think Natalie is talking about, that we don't want people to think, oh, well, we are going to get Old Main done with this millage, but I guess there would be a possibility that we wouldn't. Am I correct on that or not?
Well, don't forget, we if the board decides to use it for classroom space, we have not even applied for partnership funding for Old Main in order to even be considered whatever we would get from the state. I think that's very important in a conversation, that just because we got 14 million in a millage doesn't necessarily mean we don't know what the state would give us. I just think we're in a difficult spot.
Well, I think if it's not,
I'm sorry. Mrs. Steele?
I think if Old Main is not a priority, it's going to be very difficult for us to get this passed. Speaking of Old Main, when was the decision made that the COE program would be housed in Old Main if it were to be refurbished?
Yeah,
I missed that.
I can't remember the exact date. We had the first February 2022. We had a workshop here where we discussed that. Then we talked about it. I think we've talked about it 3 or 4 times to determine if that was the board's priority moving forward. So I know we've discussed it.
Was it voted on?
I'd have to, no, well, there wasn't a vote at the workshop. I do believe that there was a vote about priorities, I believe. Yeah, I mean, we'd have to go back and look. But I mean,
I'd like us to go back and check and see if that was actually voted on.
Because we never would have gotten this far if the board said that, you know, we don't want to go in that
I mean,
direction.
discussion is fine, but if we didn't take any action by a vote on it, then
well,
my thing is I don't want us to get out there, and if the community has other recommendations for Old Main they're very passionate about, that we say, oh, that decision has already been made. But we can discuss things, but if it hadn't been a vote, I certainly don't remember that being a vote.
I don't necessarily.
Then I think we should handle it as it's been discussed, and it's been, it can be a proposal, but certainly that should not be out there like it's determined already.
In thinking about it, I don't think that the board has ever voted. The board has just said, we agree at this point, these are our priorities, and which is what we want to find out from this survey is the community's priorities the same priorities as the board, plus the comment section. I mean, the comment section gives us, if there's more input about a different approach to Old Main, you know.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we do know is that if we were to apply for some funding from the state, Old Main would have to be used for students.
Yes. That's correct.
If it was any other purpose, the state would not
That's right.
accept our application for that. So
Well, that's not totally correct, because Old Main is a huge place. You have several different floors where you can actually do different things. Part of it may have to be for educational purposes, but I mean, let's face it, that was a high school.
Yes.
And so you have different floors that you can do different things at the same time. You could have a multi-use facility with Old Main. So really you just can't say that if it's not particularly used for that particular reason, you could get probably all COE kids on one floor.
Well, but that doesn't give them the opportunity to expand that school.
Well, and another point to that is the partnership funding is based on your use of the facility. So if we knew we were going to use maybe the top 2 floors for a civic purpose and the bottom 2 floors for education, the facility, the partnership agreement would not fund any funding
The other
for
2
the
floors.
top 2 floors.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But
So-
they could be more other uses. like when we had those meetings and people came out and they gave those their recommendations, which was a lot of recommendations about how Old Main could be used, and people remember that. And so, may I ask the question, it's not been that long ago. Well, they didn't care about any of our recommendations. They just went another direction and did something else. And some of those recommendations were actually revenue generating recommendations. So it could be things that actually bring revenues into the district that could, the floors where the students will be, certainly that would be part of a grant process. That's no promise that we would get another partnership grant either. But there are plenty of recommendations, and we don't want to just ignore those recommendations that people gave us when we go back out. And my other question was, I think we should look and maybe ask Scott or somebody at the end. You asked, would you help? Well, that's another thing. We haven't voted on it yet, and we have to make sure that's not going too far into that realm where we can't go as a district as of yet to say, well, would you participate in helping? That may be reworded or something to make sure that we're not crossing any lines.
Sure. Absolutely. We don't want to, once you give us the approval, Mr. Beardsley is going to go through it to give his final approval. I agree, Mr. Steele. We don't want to cross any lines. We're just trying to seek information. But I do know in the Old Main discussion, I believe when I first got here, the recommendation was an administration building.
There were several recommendations. The museum, Center of Arts. There was a recommendation about a culinary school in a partnership with Pulaski Technical College because there is a cafeteria in there. There is a
COE.
It's not a theater. It's a. Is
yeah.
it? Yeah.
The auditorium.
Auditorium
is a huge,
in there. There were several recommendations about that, and some of those again, the actual culinary school recommendation. That's another thing would be revenue generating and actually allowing people to come in and actually purchase food at the school at the same time and educate those kids. But that was in partnership with Pulaski Technical College.
Okay. My understanding then, Mr. Steele, I think that question was brought up the other night when we were at the first. Yeah.
Lakewood.
Lakewood Elementary.
Lakewood about that, and the gentleman brought up the same question that you asked, but it was my understanding, again, as you've repeated it, Mr. Brown, that only reason the state would give us funding, it has to serve as an academic totally. Otherwise, you don't get nothing. We'd be in the same hole that we are in now. But first, we have to present and demand. So, well, let's go ahead and get it. We'll change it to something else. And he said, no, you can't do that. So that is a stance. I know the plans when we had initially thought about years ago, but nothing ever resided out of that. But since we're trying to put it on the tax thing, it has to go on as the design is classrooms.
And there was another element, and that was that it was way more expensive to retrofit that building for anything other than classroom. The cost was way high.
Yeah.
That was another, piece of the puzzle. Yeah, factor.
Okay.
So to summarize all this, what you want us to do is, do you want us to get a focus group of parents together, or no, just make this all about your priorities that we've talked about to this point, and mention if they have any other projects, comments,
or just we'll focus on the 3 priorities that the board has established, and then we'll structure it so that they can add comments about additional projects they may be.
Let them put in the
interested
softball
in
field
the
and
district.
all that. Yeah.
Right.
Or you might even put in that where they're going to put their comments, say, we invite you to suggest what you would like. For example, we know that some people have mentioned a new baseball complex, and just give a couple of ideas for people
Gotcha.
to.
Sure. Yes.
Ms.
So-
Temple?
One more question. If they move forward and the minimal millage to do the projects, the top three, how long into the future do you think before financially money could be put back for projects that weren't covered in the millage? Because at some point, I mean, we can't keep going back and saying, hey, I need more money now for this and more money now for that. I mean, we need to be self-funding
Right. I mean,
some of these
typically,
projects.
unless there is a special source of revenue for a particular year, the district normally puts into savings usually between $1 and $1.5 million each year. That goes into the building fund. So, if you're talking about funding something without millage support, then you'd have to look at what is the price tag on that project,
And
averaging
$1 million a year.
$1 million to $1.5 million a year. That's typically what the picture is, unless you have some type of special funding that allows us to bank more, in which last year we banked $11 million. That's because the board voted to refinance the bond issues, and we got lower interest rates. We banked our savings up front so that we could have big savings over the first 4 years and put it towards capital improvement project. So just depends on the project itself, the cost, and then determining at what rate we can save for it.
All right, thank you.
And an understanding, I would like to say, Mr. Brown, back to your statement, Mr. Steele, for clarity, we never made a vote for this because it had to go to the community. And it may not be what we say, so we tell them it's nothing in stone, because they're the stakeholders. They may not even want you said middle school, they may want the high school, so therefore we have to go along with what the stakeholders say. So we never voted. We agreed to put it out there to the stakeholders and see what they want. Those were just priorities that we put out there as a board. And the survey may turn around and be totally what? Different.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. My question was, we mentioned the COE program would be housed in Old Main. I think that's just going a little far when we haven't voted on that particular information. Yeah.
So would it be fair that once this is revised, that maybe you just give it to your parental group and go from there, and then you can bring it back on their suggestions?
Well, I'll take that step further. Let me ask you this question. All of this information will have to be given to you by the November 16th board meeting, because that is when you're going to have to make a decision for March. Or you're going to say, we're going to hold off, and then we'll pick this back up in March if you want to gather more information. That's our timeline. So my question is, how many days would you like to see this survey given to? How many days would you like for them to respond? Because based on that answer, we could come back to you on the November 2nd with our focus group, all this stuff, clean it up, give it to you one more time. If it goes out November 3rd, we could have it all the way up until the 14th or even the 15th, probably the 14th, and give us a day to stop it, clean it up, get it ready to present to you on the 16th. That would be 1, 2, 3, about 12 days.
Okay,
Is that
2 weeks.
So
2
my
weeks?
question for that would be, would I be able to take this survey more than once? Or once I take it from my email address, will it close? Does that make sense? Like, I can alter the way I want this to read.
At this point, you can enter the survey as many times as you'd like, because we're not collecting data. But we can collect data.
I think that's something we need to consider.
Well, what's tough about this is that we're giving it to our parents, but you're also giving it to just
Community.
taxpayers. That's something we got to factor in. Somebody could take it multiple times.
Right. So I think maybe if one address, is there an email address registered to the survey?
If you want to collect them, yes.
And then I think once the email is placed in, it needs to be closed for that individual.
It's not as easy for stakeholders because they have to make sure they have an account created. And so it's a little more difficult. They have to do more steps. At this point, they can just use a QR code, click on it, bring up the survey,
Use
and
the
complete
link,
it.
and then
If we collect things, it's more steps for them.
I feel we need 2 weeks, because most of the time we have a survey, somebody say, I didn't get it.
that's
We
why I
don't
brought
need
it
to
up.
have
That's why I brought it up. Wasn't open and long enough.
Right.
Is the board, is that your direction to us? Is then we'll do all this and we'll come back November 2nd for a final. And then we can send it out as late as that night if you approve, or next day. We'll send it out on the 3rd. It'll go the 3rd to the 14th.
So they need that, give them an opportunity. Okay, anything else? Oh, you through, Mr. Brown? Thank you, ma'am.
It's a lot of information we gave
Lot
back.
of information.
Yeah, but that's good feedback. I mean, I'm glad that we brought it to you ahead of time to,
Okay,
we'll
thank
clean it up and bring it back to you.
We'll see you November 2nd, 3rd.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, action news item.
Yes, ma'am. First action item 12.1, employment of personnel. The superintendent recommends the employment of personnel as discussed in executive closed session.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
move that we approve the employment of personnel as discussed in closed session.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept 12.1 employment of personnel. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, so the motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam President, members of our Board of Education. Action item 12.2, Federal Program Statement of Assurance. The superintendent recommends to improve the Federal Program Statement of Assurance as presented in open session.
Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the federal program statement of assurances.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept the federal program statement of assurance. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, so the motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam President, members of our Board of Education. Action item 12.3, legal transfers. The superintendent recommends to improve the legal transfers.
Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept and approve the legal transfers.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept the legal transfers 12.3. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, so the motion is carried.
Madam President, I move that we accept 12.4, disposition of regular minutes at the September 21st meeting.
No, I need to make a motion first, please. I'm sorry. We need a motion for amendment.
Okay. 12.4, the disposition of the regular meeting minutes, September the 21st, 2023. Those in favor say aye.
Wait,
She-
no,
Hang-
the,
Right, we need to
Three.
make.
Oh,
an-
okay, I'm
Amendment.
sorry.
Madam President, I
Yes.
so move that we amend the regular meeting minutes on Thursday, September the 21st. I move that the proposed purchase of the new administrative annex building located at 3201 Highway 161 of North Little Rock reads as follows. The superintendent recommends to approve, the board members move to approve Dr. Greg J. Paluski, the superintendent, to execute the proposed purchase of the new administrative annex building located at 3201 Highway 161 North Little Rock, with the exception of the zoning contingency, and remove all other contingencies.
second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the recommendation from the superintendent of the property that is located on Highway
161.
To,
161.
To amend
it's to amend
To-
the minutes.
Yes,
The
and-
amendments.
and may I just clarify why that's in there? Because that was required, or recommended, Mr. Brown, from the underwriters, that the title company to specifically state my name, that you're giving me as the superintendent the authority to move forward with. They just wanted my full name in there, just to clarify.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, so the motion is carried.
Madam President,
Yes.
now I move that we approve the amended version of disposition of regular minute meeting September 21st, 2023.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept the recommendation of 12.4, disposition of the regular minutes and disposition also of October 5th, both. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
There wasn't a motion on the,
We need a separate motion for
Second motion for the other one.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. 12.3,
12.5.
12.5.
okay.
I move that we approve 12.5 disposition of special minute meetings October 5th, 2023.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept the 12.5 disposition of the special meeting held October the 5th. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None, so the motion is carried. Consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of 13.1 bank reconciliation, 13.2 net legal balance worksheet, 13.3 monthly financial reports, 13.4 business office items, 13.5 payment of regular bills, and 13.6 facilities use requests.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept the consent agenda 13.1 through 13.7. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, so the motion is carried. At this time, we will have acknowledgements. If you would like to have any acknowledgements.
I don't have an exact acknowledgement, but we always attend the ASBA conference in December, and we send a delegate to vote. And Ms. McLean so graciously volunteered to be the delegate, but I wanted to open it up. Was there anybody else that wanted to be the delegate?
I nominate Valerie.
Okay.
Then it is.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Valerie McClain will represent us at the December meeting of the Arkansas School Board Association. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, no opposed. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Temple, you have an acknowledgement? Okay, Dr. Redis?
No, ma'am.
Okay, welcome.
No school tomorrow. We have a football game tomorrow night, and it's
School
senior
is
night
out.
as well.
School is out.
Yes, school is out. I said that.
Okay.
Yes, I said that. School is out tomorrow. No school.
Ms. Valerie?
Hope to see more parents at our capital improvement meetings that we're having.
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Madam President, I hope that during our workshop, if time permits, that we can discuss the early release program, and I've just been getting a lot of calls and feedback on that both ways, but be good if we could discuss that at the workshop.
Yes, we're going to bring that to you, Mr. Steele. In fact, that is the topic I'm working on with our
Good.
teacher advisory right now, which is one of the reasons why they wanted to meet more, because we just started to get into it. So we're having a great discussion right now. I want to make sure I get that information from the teachers, and then we'll bring you for a full update. Absolutely.
And if not, the next workshop, whenever time permits.
Absolutely. Yes, it's on a priority list.
I just want to say to the principals and teachers out there, we appreciate you, and don't let a letter grade deceive you, because we know that you're doing great work, and just keep on pushing. And thank you for all the work, the coaches, the administrators, all of you coming together to work. We just want to say thank you. Keep up the good work.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
No, you don't.
9 o'clock.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. We adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion is carried.